What it do, everyone? What's these scenes? How you going? Welcome to another episode of Keyona Speaks. In this episode, I'm going to be sharing my story. So I announced a month ago that I am a life coach specializing in healing and self-development. The reason why I chose this niche is because it resonates with my background. You see, I was raised by women who experienced trauma, but they did not afford themselves the opportunities to take the time to heal from that trauma, nor were they encouraged by people in the community to do that. You see, being a Black woman comes with this stigma of pain is just a part of the identity. And I don't think that's true, but historically, it would say it would say otherwise. Also, depending on the context of trauma, there's certain categories of trauma that is just intended to be swept under the rug, not to be talked about. And this has done a great disservice to my upbringing, and I'm sure many other men and women. So, although I haven't gone through the same trauma as my matriarch, what I will say is that the impact of the trauma that my matriarch experienced shaped who I am, because the suppressed feelings, the limited beliefs, the fear, the negative self-talk and projection that my matriarch, hoarded internally, it showed up in how love was taught to me and how I could be a woman and how I was supposed to live my life. And I did not realize the impact of what they call secondhand trauma until I started to find within myself some imbalance. I was behaving in ways that I just couldn't figure out the why. And when I put myself on my own healing journey, was I able to see the correlation between how I was raised and how that shaped me as a person. So I'll share a couple of examples with you now. So growing up, I had this ideology that I was supposed to go to school, graduate from high school, get my degree, get a well-paying corporate job, go on to get my own house, my own car, and then get married. The independent woman ideology. And while that sounds really, really great on the surface, what that taught me, in conjunction to also not having a father that was willing to show me that he was a protector and a maintainer, is that enabled me to grow up and self-sabotage as an adult. So I'm a newlywed, and I've been talking about this a lot, how I dealt with fear of quitting my job. My job was no longer serving me. It was causing me mental and emotional pain. I would cry randomly. I dreaded Mondays. It was just a 2-year cycle of grief, basically. But I knew that it was time for me to leave. My heart was telling me it was time for me to leave, but I let fear hold me hostage for 2 years because, for one reason, I was afraid to rely on my partner. I was afraid that quitting my job would cause, some strain in my marriage, that we would be in poverty, all this foolishness. And at the time, I couldn't really pinpoint the why. Why did I have this thought process? Until I was told to do an assignment that I highly recommend to other people, is to think about where these fears come from. And they came from two sources. My matriarch preaching to me, you got to be this independent woman. You can't rely on a man. Self-sufficiency, you're all you got. And then on the other hand, my father not showing me the proper example of how I can rely on a man, whether it's my dad or my grandfather or my brother or my uncle or my now husband. I never had that proper example of that. And so I self-sabotaged my peace because I was literally afraid to. And so that was behavior that I learned. The whole independent woman thing was behavior that I learned from women who experienced trauma, who literally had to survive on the cusp of themselves and the creator. They had nobody that would come to their rescue, no one that would protect them, no one that would honor them. So they had to hold on to self-sufficiency. And I totally get that. But for me, being outside of that realm of trauma that they experienced, that ideology paid a major disservice to me. And so when I realized the correlation between being raised by a woman who experienced trauma and then experiencing the aftermath of how that trauma shaped their thought process, their belief, how they felt about themselves, that raised me into a woman that lived in fear. Secondly, another example that I will give you is that I have lacked confidence in making decisions that affect my life, no one's life but my life, because my matriarch would project her opinions on my decision making. So it became like whatever my matriarch said went. Even if my heart was against it, even if my heart told me, nah, don't follow that, that's not good for you, I still lacked the confidence to make the decisions that I knew were true for me. And it took some time for me to actually see the correlation between my negative self-talk. Why is it every time I felt like it was time to make a decision or make a change in my life that I had this negative self-talk? And when I realized that it was because I was oversharing the things that were important to me or my ideas with certain people, and then I would receive negative feedback, not even really true support, but it's immediately like, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this, this is the negative outcome that will come from that. It made me suppress and actually ignore my internal voice. I remember a couple of years ago praying to the Most High to enable me to start back listening to that voice of discernment that all of us are given. You may call it your gut instinct, you may call it a hunch, something like that. But it took me a long time to be able to really pay attention to that. And when I realized who that stemmed from, where I learned that behavior from, I had to immediately cut that out. And on social media, they talk a lot about like moving in silence. And I realized that when I would withhold information from that particular person and not even tell them how I was trying to move, that I found the confidence and the conviction in my decision making. And there have been 3 occasions in my life where I actually implemented that. And I'm still in that decision to this day. I'm extremely happy that I made that decision and I listened and I trusted myself. What's another example that I can give about my story as it relates to the trauma? Oh, triggers. Man, I'm so triggered. When you're children and you're raised by your mother, your father, whoever, you take up their mannerisms, their gestures, a lot of just, you kind of shaped by their presentation. And man, I grew up in a household where like everybody's in the defense mode. Everybody got to prove their point. Everybody is like rah, rah. And I learned that, like, first of all, I wasn't invited to be that child that could, express myself. So I had to suppress. Shout out to journals. If it wasn't for having paper to talk to, I probably would be, I don't know. But like I couldn't really express myself. So as I got older and I got into that age range where I could kind of open up more, you can't tell a child forever to stay in the child's place. Was I then, realizing that I would be like, how you push somebody up in a corner and they come out swinging because you got their back against the wall? That's how I would communicate. And I haven't even officially overcome that. It's something that I'm working towards every single day. My husband tells me sometimes, like, why you feel like you got to prove your point? Like, well, who hurt you in the past that made you feel like you always got to you always got to prove your point. You always got to, get in defense mode. And I'm realizing now that I'm constantly doing the work where that stemmed from, feeling like, just seeing that everybody in my family, well, I'm not going to say everybody, majority of people in my family, like, were easily triggered, ready to off you. Let me not say that. That's probably not the best word to say. We're easily triggered, easily combative when it comes to, feeling we have to defend our point, have the last word, stuff like that. So when I realized that who I am as a person, how I behave, how I think about, how I thought about myself, even down to the decisions that I was making that naturally, some things came from, from me, from just kind of like going through the bouts of life. But a lot of that was shaped by being raised by women who experienced trauma, were impacted by their trauma, and never took the time to do their own healing work, and instead let that be a concrete belief of theirs, and it showed up in how they raised their children and grandchildren. I was like, nah, this not for me, Chief. I need to break this generational curse. I need to work through my own trauma with my dad, with my matriarch, with my upbringing. And not to say I had a crazy life. I was very blessed with a very good life. It's just when you think about your emotional state and your self-belief, like I really didn't have confidence. I really didn't believe in myself. So when I realized that I need to do the work to fix that, because that was affecting like relationships, that was affecting me, realizing that I'm not all about corporate America. Like having a good job is cool, but it doesn't make me feel happy. It doesn't sustain me. When I realized how all that was shaping that, and I didn't want to go into having children and projecting all of that unresolved trauma, all that unresolved consequences from how I was raised onto them, I said, nah, I have to do my own work. And so I did. I took some time back in like 2019 and started doing some research, started doing some work, and I created a workbook called Blossom into Your Healing Journey, which is also the name of my coaching program, where I included those activities that I did so that I could now give the blueprint to somebody else. And I realized throughout my life that I love helping people. I love when people come to me and say, Jan, can I vent to you about something? Can I get your opinion about something? Can you just be my sounding board? And then at the end of the conversation, they feel like, oh man, like I didn't even think about it that way. Oh yeah, like man, I knew I should have did woo woo woo. And so when I realized that I really get a kick out of life when I'm helping people, and I'm helping people become better than how they were before they met me, I said, oh, coaching, that might be my thing. And then when I had to, really think about what type of coach, I said, I got to do healing and self-development, because being a Black woman, being Black in general, and seeing how we literally like carry the weight of our pain, carry the weight of our family's pain, and we're supposed to have this badge of honor, like we the sugar honey iced tea. I don't want to curse, but like we top notch because we thriving in life, but whole time we're dying inside. Like that's not the type of time that I'm on. And so I wanted to start with helping Black women first myself, first the people in my closest circle, my family, my friends, but just globally, just helping Black women who are ready. That's the thing, ready to do the work, to finally figure out the causes of why they think the way they think about themselves, why they carry that fear, why they so triggered the way they are. Because the thing is, when you live your life not knowing why you are the way you are, then you're just kind of like unintentionally just going about life. And that's how it was when I lacked self-accountability. But when you start to question, like, why you keep bumping your head against the wall, why is it every time you want to make a decision in life, you have that negative voice that keeps repeating? When you start asking yourself why, and you sit still and you do the thinking work, and then you start tackling on how you're going to, combat that, will you truly see that within you, you have so much potential, so much competency, like you have what it takes, honestly. And so yeah, that's really what sparked me to becoming a life coach, specifically a healing and self-development coach. And I just really wanted to push out there that why do I resonate with this niche? Why do I resonate with this particular demographic of people that I am passionate about working with? I think it's so important for people to share their stories, because when you share your story, do you truly know how other people are shaped by your story? Do you truly know how you're shaped by other people's stories as well? So that concludes a little bit of my story about, how I relate to trauma. I've definitely been through some trauma, but I'm not going to add that into this part just yet. But I just wanted to do an introduction on why I am the life coach that I am, and just let, women that listen, or women that, watch me on social media, see how I'm just not some guru out here telling you how to overcome your trauma. I've experienced it. I've worked through it. I'm working through it, and I'm passionate about helping you do the same. So if you enjoy my story, if you resonate with my story, if you wanted to know more about myself, more about my coaching, my program, check me out at www.keyonaspeaks.com. Follow me on Instagram at Coach Keyona. My coaching program is a long-term relationship, so it's bi-weekly for 3 months. And the reason why I created it that way is because healing takes time. And I don't promise clients that once they're done with my program that they're going to be officially healed. What I intend to do is help to identify and set those action steps. So as life continues to go and you get new triggers and you get new negative thinking, that you already know how to combat that. You already know what to do to work through it, because healing never stops. Healing is a continual journey. It's all about life, And so having that long-term relationship, I see the benefit of doing that. And sometimes we may talk about things that we really need to process through. So yeah, go to my website, learn more about the program, schedule a discovery call with me either on Instagram or on my website. There's a way that you can schedule a call with me so we can talk more about your needs and if I'm compatible. I will tell you this. I love to help people do their trauma, but I'm not a psychiatrist and I'm not a therapist. So you may need a psychiatrist and a therapist, and then also potentially a life coach as your complete mental health, trauma health support system. So I know my limitations. I will tell you them. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. Thank you much for supporting. Stay tuned for more podcast episodes coming from me talking about my coaching business and, of course, being transparent and sharing my life experiences. Remember to own your story, and we'll connect next time. Peace.